So, these governments had revolutions, and the importance behind them actually differs for each one. Yes, they sort of established the basic role of each of these countries, but there's more to it than that. So, first, the United States. The United States was able to win a war against a much more powerful government. The colonies were nowhere near as powerful as Great Britain was at this time. Great Britain, of course, was in a little bit of trouble because they were in debt at the time from having to fight so many wars, which is why they taxed the colonies so hard. But this taxation is ultimately what led to the breaking up of the colonies from Great Britain. But the importance of this revolution is that we see a democratic republic started that really focuses on individual freedom, individual rights, limiting the power of the government, because before this, governments were pretty much all powerful, and making sure that everyone has representation. Now, I say everyone in a very loose term because it is still a while for some people to get that representation in the United States. But those are the ideas that were really what was the foundation, the base of the American Revolution. Next, the French Revolution showed that even though an age-old system is in place, there is still room to change. We still have the power to change it, especially if it is unfair or if it is corrupt. So it really focuses on equality, especially among all classes. I'd mentioned that the wealthy, the aristocrats, were really taking advantage of their influence and power over the monarchy. And so where the ruling class, the wealthy class, received all of the benefits, the working class people ended up getting hit with super hard times, not being able to find food and starving. And so it inspired the revolution that then ideally would create equality among all classes. And we will see that France kind of goes through a bit of, goodness, how can I even explain it? A bit of a struggle. It's not like the United States where they've established this government and this is going to be the government that they have for, the rest of until today. France really kind of goes back and forth on what they want. But the ideals, the same as the United States that were founded on it, are based on there is no system that is too old to change, and equality among all people. The next, the Saint-Domingue, in other words, the revolution in Haiti. This one was important because it proved that indigenous people, the people who live in a country, have the right to rule their own country, and that enslaved people were not born to be slaves. They deserved freedom. So this revolution made Haiti the first independent nation in the Americas to abolish slavery, to get rid of slavery, and became the first black-led republic in the world. So it is because of this revolution that sparks conversation among other countries on maybe slavery is not a good thing. And as I mentioned earlier, the response from much larger countries at the time, like the United States, was fearful because of they had slaves, and this kind of revolution was being talked about around the world. Um, and America, as we know, wanted to hold on to having slaves for a while until, of course, the Civil War happened. So these are the three choices in talking about which government do you think had the most significant revolution. All very good choices for different reasons. And with that, let's now talk about the events or the big changes that happened that we can still feel in society, in our world today, that came from this age. Now, let's look at some ideas, some events, some changes that happened during the Age of Revolution that we still feel today. So, these first few we've actually talked about a little bit already when we've talked about inventions and the government revolutions. So it should be no surprise to see democracy on here. Now, democracy was not invented during the Age of Revolution. The idea that we can vote or pick who are our leaders or representatives in the government, that started, of course, with ancient Greece, as far back as we know. But we don't start seeing it really implemented, really used on a large scale until the Age of Revolution, where we see countries like, the newly founded United States and France try to change their governments to be democracies, to be elected officials. And because of that, today we see numerous countries using the democracy system. Then we also have, when we talked about the revolution in Haiti, the idea of human rights and abolition came in this one. This also has to do with the American Revolution, with the idea that individual rights are important, as well as in the French Revolution, that the rights of the working class are important and equal to that of a wealthy aristocratic class. But it extends further than human rights. Abolition, of course, is finally recognizing that the enslaved people of this time are human and should have rights and freedoms just like everybody else. So this is another idea that endures until today. Then we have one that we have not discussed yet, which is nationalism. Now, when we are talking about nationalism, we are talking about this idea that a nation or a country, they have one culture, and that culture should be top priority. That nation, if you will, because when we're talking about nationalism, the word nation is right in there. That nation, what we want as a culture is the most important thing. It is about loyalty to the nation and devotion to your country. So we have people doing things because they feel that it's what the nation needs or the nation wants. So we have, for example, the French feel like what France is doing, especially whenever we have things like Napoleon, who starts to create his own empire, they feel that this is all in the name of making France more powerful and doing things that aren't necessarily right, but they feel like it is best for the country itself. so they're doing it. Whereas again, we see that the 13 colonies didn't feel that they were British because of the oceans between them. Yet they were being taxed like the British. Then they didn't get to share any of the rights or representations that the British did. So they didn't feel that their nationalism did. So they were like, no, we are our own country. And they developed nationalism for the newly born United States. This one is an important one too, because this idea of nationalism, this idea that the country's interests are the most important because we share a culture, is what is going to lead to a lot of problems down the road for World War I and World War II. And even today, we see a lot of nationalist activity and a lot of nationalist expression because, to an extent, we all have pride. We're all very proud of our countries and we want what's best for our country. So it's another idea that has endured through the age of revolution into our modern day. And the next, when we talked about the steam engine, industrialization. Industrialization is the idea that industry was now made. We have decided that we are going to use that steam engine to build factories. And because we're building factories, we're also expanding our cities. And less people are now farming. More people are going to start working in factories. It shifted how people live their daily lives. Instead of learning a trade, like how to make something, they were now made in factories. So you would go and work in the factory to do it instead. More people were needing to find jobs as a result of this. And the jobs that were available, of course, were in these factories. So we start to see a new industry being made where things can be mass produced, and that's affecting the prices of things. It's affecting the way we live our lives. It also starts affecting the environment, because this is where we start to see some of the big smog and smoke issues happening in major cities where the factories are first being built. London itself experiences some heavy smog issues at this time, as well as several cities in the United States. And they start to put restrictions and regulations so that that it's not just foggy and smoggy all day. So the industrialization had a huge impact that is still felt. Then we, of course, have the medical advances. I'd mentioned earlier, new medical tools are made, the X-ray is now made, vaccines are now being made. A big important part that I have here is, of course, cleaner medical practices. It is at this time that they start thinking, we need to really wash our hands. Eventually, they'll also start wearing gloves. Those are big leaps compared to what medicine used to be, not just 100 years ago from this time. As well as the anesthetics I'd mentioned now make surgery much safer for people because they're not moving while important surgeries are being done. And of course, this has led to the advances that we now have today. We now don't have just X-ray, we have MRIs, we have ultrasounds. We don't just have a smallpox vaccine, we have a ton of vaccines that end up saving people's lives and preventing sickness. So it's another good choice for discussing things that impact society. So look at these 5 things, or see if you can find some of your own, because I guarantee you these are not the only 5 ideas or changes or events that have happened that are still around today in the modern world. So let's move on to our next point. In my next point is to always remember the rule of threes. So when you are picking your single most important event or change that occurred during the Age of Revolution that we still, that impacts us still today, remember to do one point, which is really just describing what that is and why it is important in the moment. And then moving that into two things that the idea itself, or what you're talking about, came as a result. Because of this, this happened. And because of this, this happened. Because any significant event is going to have sort of a chain of responses that occur in history. So really consider that. Here I just have an example for the rise of nationalism, which I already discussed in the previous panel. So, like I said, just remember to try and identify three things that helped shape your opinion on why it is the most important. And with that, let's wrap this up. So lastly, let's reflect on the things we've talked about today in regards to the Age of Revolution. Let's think about the progress that was made through the new inventions, through the government revolutions. We have seen a leap forward in society because of the revolutions that occurred. But with that progress also comes some challenges. And as we move into the modern era, we will see how things like the government revolutions, even the inventions, are going to lead to problems that will span worldwide, as the inventions such as the steam engine, the airplane, the car will be used to make new weapons, and how the new sense of nationalism and pride we have in our country will also lead to the next World War. But let's not forget the relevance of the Age of Revolution, the way that the Age of Revolution has lasted through time. And by that I mean the ideas of the revolution, the ones that we talked about with the French Revolution and the American Revolution and the Haitian Revolution, the idea that we should always be pursuing new technology, new inventions, new ideas. We should be always looking on how we can improve the world around us, society, to make a better place. And everyone, that is all the time we have. Again, my name is Eric Teacher, and until next time, I'll see you later.